Now, with the dance of political competition getting ever more energetic, nowhere have the plans and the talents of the candidates been encapsulated more visibly than in the Arise Town Hall event. The latest and third in the series took place this weekend with the candidates of the People's Democratic Party, the Labour Party and the New Nigeria People's Party in attendance. The APC candidate was absent. But beyond the competitors themselves, the subtext appears to be the skepticism and frustration of an electorate that's tired of politicians who for decades have been intent on skirting the truth. What we have now is an electorate that's more energized, a body politic, outraged at the decades of insults from their elected officials, but which has now realized its authority and is demanding to know, well ahead of the vote, how those who want to lead them plan to deliver on their promises. So how did the candidates package themselves at this third Arise presidential town hall event?
Our GDP growth was 2.25%. Our money supply was about 13%. And that is, look at it, what is inflation? When your money supply is more than your growth. So you don't even have growth to be able to, for the money you're printing and throwing into the system. We need to move the country from consumption to production. Once it becomes productive, it will create labor and be able to employ people. And that's what I'm going to focus on.
We look at the issues of the NDDC ranging from pollution, education, agriculture, and so on and so forth, and of course the infrastructure that we have there. So in essence, I'm so happy that I've been to almost everywhere and strong enough to be the president of this country at this moment in time. And I'm happy, like I said, the issue of health, the age, and everything is working on my side. And I believe that together with Nigerians, we are going to make Nigeria a better place for each and every Nigerian.
I believe Nigerians cannot afford to hand over or to elect any governor or to elect any person who has less experience than I have got. And when you come to the issue of business in the private sector, I have been involved in the business in the private sector, from oil logistics to manufacturing to agriculture. So again, you cannot find me wanting as far as those sectors of the economy are concerned.
Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, and before him, Rabiu Kwankwaso of the NNPP and Peter Obi of the Labour Party. Well, for their considered analysis of that Arise Town Hall event, as the contestants flashed their credentials for high office and their visions for the future of this country, I'm joined now in the studio by the author, international journalist and African affairs analyst Lindsay Barrett, by Arise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper Mahmood Jega, and by the political affairs commentator, Arise News analyst and head of mass communications at Bayes University in Abuja, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for joining us. And let me come to you first, Professor Adeniyi. The conclusion from the response on social media seems to be that they all looked presidential. There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? A lot of plans reeled out. Which bit stood out for you?
Well, I think it was an improvement on their performances overall. It just came clear that the contestants are now much more conversant with the issues. They were on top of the myriad of problems bedeviling us, and of course they penetrated the issues, the problems from their own backgrounds, from their own understanding, and it was quite convincing that largely they could leverage on their knowledge of what the situation is, to advance solutions in the future. But like we always say, it often goes beyond, analysis, of the problem. Sometimes we could run into the danger of paralysis of analysis. And we have to be careful not to get into that booby trap. But overall, I think the candidates were excellent. There was quite good evidence, that they prepared for it, that they've done a lot more research, and of course, the question of repetition was gradually declining, So what we can expect from here, given the specificities, given the fact that the areas they concentrated on yesterday were on specialized areas, going forward, I'm very hopeful that they will continue to improve on their performance, because it is very important, to underscore the fact that ideation, precedes, implementation. If you are able to, dissect a problem, then chances are that you'll be able to preside over solutions to the problem. And of course, there are pointers, there are signals from the contestants, the three of them that is, that they are ready for the job. But it is one thing again to have an understanding. It's another thing to be appreciated by the electorates, and of course for the electorates to give them their vote. That's a different question, which is probably still hanging until the election day.
Absolutely. And let me come to you, Lindsay Barrett. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. What did you make of that town hall event? How did it strike you?
Well, I think it was a wonderful opportunity for the Nigerian electorate to hear from people who have the ambition to lead them, how they hope to lead. It was an opportunity that is not usual in Nigeria. Nigerian politics does not really have a history, since independence especially, of giving Nigerians a chance to judge the characters who want to lead. But this was a wonderful opportunity to see them. And what was most interesting was the harmony among them. Actually, watching it, I was amazed at how much like each other they sounded. And that gives Nigerians a chance to say, well, all these people have similar ideas. So what are the things that we should select from? So that was the opportunity they were given to see the truth about these people.
That's a very good point. And Mahmood Jega, just following up from Lindsay Barrett there, one thing that's emerging from all of this, as he said, is and is a sort of subtext, is the fact that we're seeing a much more enlightened electorate who are demanding more from those who want to lead them. So a much more energized electorate, would you say?
Well, actually, there was a strident campaign by NGOs and by the media to get the major politicians to focus on the issues, because as Lindsay Barrett said, that previously most activity in Nigerian political campaigns was huge rallies. You climb the podium, you shout, and the supporters shout back, and in the end, really nothing concrete gets said. It's just the excitement and the size of the crowd. But this time, this particular election cycle, with agitation by the media and the NGOs and other enlightened segments of the society, we have seen a change. There have been many more town hall format meetings in this election cycle than there were in previous cycles. And last night's event, organized by Arise TV, was very, very successful, because we got to hear we had the concentrated attention of these three major candidates on very important issues like education, healthcare, even specifics like what do we do about the incessant ASU strikes, what do we do about medical tourism, thousands of Nigerians going abroad every year, squandering so much money on medical tourism, and about the mismanagement of local government accounts. All these issues got concentrated attention yesterday and were very, very useful. But again, as Professor Adeni said, we will have to find out the impact that it has had on the electorate. We hope the electorate was listening, or people make up their minds who to vote for other reasons other than quality of discussion.
Well, absolutely, and we're going to try and read those tea leaves in the course of this conversation. I don't know how successful we'll be, but Professor Adeni, the candidate of the APC, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, respectfully invited, but as Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni said, conspicuously absent. Was that a missed opportunity to make his pitch? to the Nigerian people, do you think?
Well, it would have been very helpful if he attended, because we had all the major candidates, represented. I mean, they appeared yesterday, so he was the one that was clearly absent, and of course, it was a big it was a big hole, that was yearning to be filled, and of course, very regrettable, no doubt. But what do we do in this circumstance? It's a democracy. I've made this point before. No one can be forced, to appear at a talking session. He has his choice. Democracy is about making choices. But in making your choice, you also have to be careful. You also have to be circumspect, realizing that the electorates are probably also watching, and do not want to be seen as being taken for granted. I also want to believe that, yes, that I did very well, good preparation ahead of the election. I also want to believe that the candidates will still have, the particular candidate in question still has other opportunities to appear before on Arise Town Hall. And of course, if it doesn't want to arise, for no reason, no justifiable reason anyway, there are still some other platforms where he can make himself available. The important thing is that the populace want to see him engage. You don't want to see how engaging he can be, And of course, we do not want narratives, to be self-constructed. And sometimes where narratives are objectively constructed by other parties, it gives more credibility, more reputation to the process, But what is more important to me is for all of us to come to an understanding, realizing that we're all stakeholders, in the building of a nation, and that implies that we all have to be involved, in processes and procedures that are integral, in a pre-election stage. And one of that process is debate, is town hall, is conversation, engagement with the people, through the instrumentality of the press, through the media, given the constitutional role that the media is supposed to play. But again, finally, on this point, Charles, I don't think this thing should be done, while parties are breaking bones. It can be achieved in an atmosphere of peace and understanding.
Yeah, thank you very much for making that point. And Lindsay Barrett, do you think this town hall actually moved the needle for any of the presidential candidates? Did their performance raise or lower their public profile in your assessment?
Well, from where I have been watching events, I have to say that I think the electorate has moved the process. I don't know if the process has moved the electorate yet. We won't know until February. But what I do know is that the Arise Town Hall has arisen out of an obvious need for the younger Nigerian electorate to hear the people's, hear the opinion of the ambitious ones. Interestingly, I have heard it said that Nigeria has more than 50% people under the age of 50 something. It's a very interesting factor in what is coming up at the election. One, because of social media, there's a lot more public opinion being sprouted about. And as a result, the politicians who are coming up in the next election may have to pay much more attention to what the public want.
Good point.
Something like the town hall meeting gives that electorate a chance to be, not only to be heard, but also to hear what the politicians are about. So I believe the nature of the electorate has moved the process.
Well, thank you for that. And Mahmoud Jega, looking at people, for example, like Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, do you think Nigerians have now got past the internecine squabbles between the PDP leadership and the rebel leader, if I might call him that, Nyesom Wike, and his supporters? In other words, people are now assessing them and him on their own, on his own terms, and I've got past that widely sort of talked about potentially debilitating effect of the Wike factor.
Well, yesterday at last night's Arise Town Hall, there was very little politics. The main concentration, and thanks to you, Oga Charles, since you directed most of it,
was on the issues. Although I remember Rabi Okonkoso, the NNPP candidate, took some minutes, to harp on how they left PDP and went to other parties, later went back and things like that. But mostly politics was out, and this issue of the rebellion in PDP hardly came up last night, which I think was very good. And I think the candidates, the three of them that appeared yesterday, showed that they took the town hall seriously and the promises that they will make, because this is on live television and we are going to have it on record. And if any one of them happens to win the election, he will not be able to easily walk away from some of the things he said last night, which was why in some cases they were uncomfortably truthful. For example, there was the effort to get them to give a commitment of personal example to do away with medical tourism. But although, for example, Konkoso said it is very good for a leader to live by example, but Atiku Abubakar said, well, he will patronize local hospitals if they can take care of the health problem that he has, even though right now he said he is in good health. And Mr. Peter Obi also said, while one should patronize local hospitals, if you have a referral, it is understandable that you should go abroad, that all over the world. So I thought that was very good, because one should not make a serious promise just to score a political point, only for you to win the election, and then you begin to do something else, because we are going to wave this video in your face when that happens.
Yes, I'm glad you made that point, because that's an important one to take on board. And Professor Adeniyi, of course, there is, he mentioned Rabiu Kwankwaso there is what appears to be the subtly powerful force of Mr. Kwankwaso. I mean, outside the Arise studios in Lagos, I mean, it was amazing how the place was completely overwhelmed by sort of dozens of Kwankwasia supporters who basically thronged the place, and they came apparently unbidden. I mean, he does seem to be a force to be reckoned with, doesn't he?
Charles, politicians, they can be very theatrical, they can be full of razzmatazz, and they can come up with things, that could just be, episodic, some things that may not be deep-seated really. At the same time, it's not to say that some of these things cannot be fundamental to the determination of their popularity. But largely, there's a lot of showings, going on in the atmosphere. That's the kind of things we expect in a pre-election time, but I'm not going to judge any of them on the basis of celebrations or supporters who are momentarily celebratory. It depends on the kind of arrangement that a candidate may probably make, ahead of such events. And if that arrangement is quite robust, if it is vibrant, it will probably give a feeling of acceptability or popularity. But at the same time, some other yardstick may be brought to the table, and it will just show that it's simply full of sound and fury and signifying nothing. But at this time, really, I may not want to be conclusive, but I'm just making my overall assessment that those things are not necessarily what will determine where the pendulum will swing. It's also important to underscore the fact that most of the time, the argument is plausible that the electorates are practically made up their mind, even as we speak. And even as the town hall is going on, even as the debates are going on, they're probably made up their minds, and only very little thing will change their minds, before the election. So those things may not really matter, even without necessarily saying that it doesn't mean that the candidate is not popular.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And in fact, on the question of undecided voters, all the polls suggest that there are still a significant percentage of people. I mean, the ANAP poll suggested that somewhere between 15 and I think 30-something% were undecided. The other one, Bloomberg, somewhere between 17 and 45% next year. I think 20-something or something to that effect percent. So that's a significant chunk of people to go after if you were a presidential candidate, because they could obviously swing the vote. But Lindsay Barrett, what about the Labour Party and Peter Obi? Is that surge of support that he enjoys being enhanced by his performance at events like this Arise Town Hall, or is it faltering a bit?
Well, I don't really know, Charles, but what I do know is that it was a genuine element of the political thought at the start of the process. The fact that a lot of people seem to be sympathetic to Obi. Obi's popularity comes from various historical factors, and I've said it over and over, that one of the things that makes Obi a popular candidate is that people see him as a marginalized factor. And many Nigerians think that they too are marginalized for different reasons. And so I think that he has been able to keep that image, even though he doesn't use that in his, when he speaks, which a lot of people are liking him for, that he doesn't talk about having been victimized. You know, he talks about having a new idea for Nigeria. So I think things like the town hall have helped more people to listen to him, but whether they've helped people to develop more sympathy for him, I don't really know.
Yeah, good point. And at this point, Mahmood Jega, how do you read the tea leaves, if it's possible to do that? I mean, does it look like we have a crop of presidential hopefuls that are likely to be, or are perhaps now forced to be more responsive to a much more demanding electorate?
I think, as was observed earlier, one of the noticeable features was that the debate, well, even though in the introduction to the town hall you did say it wasn't a debate, it was a town hall, and probably the candidates took that to heart. So there was no animated argument or anything, and in most cases they agreed. Actually, they were saying the same thing most of the time from their different experiences. Two of them were former state governors, and Atiku Abubakar was the former vice president, and they all spoke, you know, like on these matters of mismanagement of local government funds, or even what to do about synergy between the different tiers of government. They all had, or even how to address the problem of 20 million out of school children. They all had very interesting perspectives coming from their backgrounds as governors and as vice presidents. So on the whole, it was quite a successful occasion. Probably the only missing link was the absence of the APC candidate, who would have made matters more complete, but he had his own reasons, I think.
I suppose he did, but Professor Adeniyi, we've got about a minute and a half left, sadly, for the rest of the program. In terms of the margins between the front-runner candidates in this election, for you personally, do they appear to have grown tighter, or has the gap between them widened in terms of their chances of winning?
I think I would prefer the former, Charles. You know, I think it is tighter, really. And of course, I'm going to place the chances between three people, which has always been obvious to me: the APC candidate, the PDP candidate, and of course the Labour Party. You know, and we do not know really where the pendulum is going to swing, like I said earlier. But there's still some months to go. You know, there are still so many indicators to look at, and there's still some more work to do by the candidates themselves. You know, so whoever will win at the end of the day will have to work harder. You know, the coast is clear, and the ball is in their court.
And on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, Mahmood Jega, and of course, Lindsay Barrett. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.